Mighty lords, allow me to introduce you to the conqueror of Anatolia, the liberator of Syria, the hero of Constantia.
Enough of that, damn you.
Lord. It is Magister Septimus Gergus of the new Roman Empire.
Him? There?
Does something about my appearance offend you, my king?
You are short.
Great. Now let us declare the introductions over and let's talk. And by that I mean I will talk. You know what I've done. You've seen what we are capable of and what the gods have decreed you deserve.
You're going to complain that I took your family from you?
I am going to kill everyone who ever called you king if you do not agree to my terms. King as, I don't care. Desert king.
Do you conduct all your diplomacy with such rudeness?
With Sassanids, yes.
Do you wonder how I stay so calm in front of you, after all that you have taken from me? Did you even think about that?
Nothing gives me greater pleasure. Now, you know my request. Will you grant truce?
I think we could both use the rest. Certainly, truce it is. I'll let you know when the truce is over, shall I?
Keep barking. Give me an excuse.
Oh, you are insistent. I don't think he likes me.
Hello there and welcome back to Fields of Mars. In the previous episode we were pushing hard against the Sassanids. We took Melitene from them as more and more of our forces arrived on the front lines. Septimus fought a decisive battle at Constantia, defeating a Sassanid army and eventually taking the region. Then Anicius the Younger faced a big battle against multiple Sassanid armies and was able to win, severely weakening the enemy, so much so that we were able to take more lands from them, and then, as we saw, actually go even further and force a peace deal after having conquered a couple more minor settlements to complete some regions. So now the war is actually over. After a million episodes of war with the Sassanids, we finally have a chance to do something else, and what we're going to do is nothing, essentially. We really need to spend some time gathering money and building up all of the territories we've got so far, converting them over to be Roman-style cities to give us garrisons, and just generally sorting all of the mess out. The entire empire's been in a mess the whole time. We need to make it so every region has a stable food supply, since even if your global food supply is stable, you still get rebellions in regions that are locally lacking in food. So you need to sort that out and get rid of buildings that are reducing public order and things like that. And just try to make it so we're not facing rebellions constantly, and that was somewhat successful. And we're now here just a couple of turns later, when after a long battle to get into the tech screen, we're going to start researching canonical law. This is another step towards theocracy, essentially, and we need this to start spreading our religion more, which is another thing we need to improve public order. So slowly it seems the laws of our religion will be taking over our regular administrative laws, but that is what needs to happen, it seems. Now, we're actually not going to stay at peace for very long. After just a couple of turns, we're going to go to war with Aaron, and we're going to do it by getting Pontus to buy us into this war. This avoids the fact that Aaron are allied to the Sassanid Empire, so that doesn't restart anything over there. But what it does mean is we can clear them out, because they've got territories in the middle of our empire. So now that we have a little bit of free time, we can quickly dedicate ourselves to just clearing this up. So Septimus goes to take the major settlement, this big city in Asia Minor, and that's no problem at all. We just storm in and take it instantly. We'll occupy that settlement, so that's all well and good. Now, there was one thing I missed about Aaron. You can see it just at the top of the screen there. They actually have a full stack right near Constantinopolis, and I had been ignoring that for whatever reason, but that's going to come back to haunt me in a second. We did also manage to send out Varus to take down one of their frontline armies. This army had been harassing Pontus, so hopefully they'll be very grateful to us to have stepped into this war. We'll just wipe out the army that was chasing their guys across the map. And after that I thought, yep, Aaron's pretty weak now, but of course they did still have this big army, and it's actually led by a really good general. It's a pretty decent army as well. And they attack Nicomedia. Now, this battle was probably winnable, but as you'll see, I'm actually going to alter it a little bit. I think I was just in low spirits about a battle like this, because we'd seen one recently where I thought it was winnable, and then it absolutely was not. And it's one of these things where it takes quite a lot of real-world time to make an attempt at fighting a battle like this. So if I wasn't confident it was going to work, I wasn't going to bother, because it'd be quicker to just bring Septimus over and kill this guy in the next turn. Unfortunately, he actually just sacked Nicomedia and then went on to make another attack at Synada, so that wasn't very good, and this time I wasn't going to tolerate this. Our garrison's a tiny bit bigger, the enemy's a bit weaker now, and it just looks like it's going to be a bit easier this time to do some classic scout equity exploits and find a way to win this battle, especially with that high level commander being so near death. So I decided to give this one a go. I'm glad to report that the uptake of the temple scripture has been rather strong. Finally, the people will read something wholesome. You've seen those diaries, haven't you? You think you were a god himself, the way... No matter, gentlemen, we have to look forwards now to the next step. We have firmly established the right and wrong of so many celestial matters, and yet the rights and wrongs of our lives aren't exactly aligned. How are the gods to be served by the people when their leaders do not instruct them to do so? You all understand me, yes? Law. There must be law to unify the people in worship, and law to set our greatest minds to work on the contemplation of ways to better progress our relationship with the gods. There is no higher purpose, after all. As usual in this sort of battle, we start by drawing the enemy in to attack us in a few choke points so they can start getting their flanks exposed to potential attacks. These cavalry being generous to me, trying to attack my spearmen, but they are actually inadvertently damaging my spearmen, as you can see, because my archers are going absolutely wild and just slamming arrows into the back of our own ranks. I really don't like using ranged units in this game. They're just so very friendly fire in comparison to the other Total War games, and I don't really know why. So that's going to be a problem, but at least we'll be taking out those cavalry. Really, it's all the infantry we need to deal with, and our main weapon against them will be taking out their morale. We're trying to get their general. Our cav are coming in over there to take out the enemy's skirmishers. That'll be a nice opportunity. And here, once again, cav trying to hit my lines, not doing much, but the rains of arrows falling down all over the place, doing the damage. There you can see them just water falling down into this melee and killing everyone, really. And we see here the power of this friendly fire. It is intense. Our front line here is taking javelin fire and being wiped out, but our back line, those spearmen, are also being wiped out by something, and I'm pretty sure it's our own friendly fire. Our front line actually routs from those javelineers throwing things into them, and then our spearmen just rout in the face of this enemy attack, and they rout into it because they don't know what they're doing, so that entire unit's going to be lost. I think that was our commanding unit as well, so that is perfect. It's not going as well as I would have hoped so far. Our cavalry came in to attack some of the enemy's other spearmen to just quickly rout them away, and that worked out easily enough. Their general was in there as well. He's still not dead, but his unit's shattered, so that's a start. We still need to do something about this big wave of infantry coming into our central position, though. I'm sending in our inferior troops to lock them down. Our archers are going to get out the way to potentially shoot them in the flanks. Our medium infantry probably won't do all that much against them, so we need to still try and use the archers to take the enemy down. Got some reserves from other approaches that can come in to help out as well. There's their general, still fighting on against one of my equites. Managed to kill his whole unit without killing him, which is nice and annoying, and it seemed like he was going to get away here, but at the last second, some of our scout equites throw javelins and kill that general. That's great, a nice high-level enemy commander going down. I thought that might cause all their spears over here to rout. A lot of those spear units are really low on men, as you can see, but they didn't, so we'll have to keep going. Didn't work as well as I thought. Our archers will, though, be able to get a tiny bit less friendly fire with these attacks because they're firing kind of from the flanks. So hopefully we can damage the enemy without killing so many of our own men, and our own men are weaker now, so I guess it doesn't matter so much if we lose more of them. Luckily, we did get the enemy to chain rout once the cavalry came in for the rear attack. That was what I expected, and it did work. So that's most of their infantry gone. The battle didn't end there, but the balance bar did swing into our favour now. We have to finish off the survivors. We're just still going strong. Some of them having no luck at all, trying to hack through these Legio Comitatenses who were just fine taking on these generic spears. This one unit that was left towards the end decided to charge into the centre on its own, and finally the archers proving themselves a little bit more useful, just dispatching that unit from a distance so we don't have to deal with them. And the enemy's remaining troops, I think they had some horse archers or something, decided to abandon the fight. It's a heroic victory in the end, not what I thought we'd get given how much we lost to make that defence, but I guess the enemy did have a big advantage to start with, so that's where that's coming from. Still, it did seem to go worse than planned, but at least it was possible, and perhaps the same thing would have actually been possible down at Nicomedia. So that's the end of that. We'll ransom the captive since it was only a garrison, and most of that Aran army is dead. I think I just sent Costa over to finish him off after this. The main action is with Septimus once again, where we're going to sail out to Gortina, this island settlement that we need to take from Aran, just so they don't have this base right in the middle of the map. That would be pretty annoying to leave on their side. Taking a long time to get there, so we're on the way and just checking out some more public order issues, and immigration continuing to be the big issue in every single province. It got to the point where every province had 90% immigrants, and that's because of a kind of weird oversight in the game's design, I guess. The Western Roman Empire style factions get immigration constantly, so people from other factions are always coming to join you, but there's no way to get rid of them, and there's no way to integrate them into your society in any way, so you always have a 90% immigrant population, which is the maximum, which always gives you -9 to public order in every region. For other factions it's actually more like -20, but the Western Romans kindly get an ability that reduces the penalty from immigration, so that's nice, but the fact that you then get infinite immigration pretty much ruins that little faction bonus. So that's really the main reason I've been having so much trouble with public order the entire time, and we're working towards sorting that out by just stacking so many positive public order bonuses everywhere that we can ignore it. So this now continues on for quite a while. We're going to have another era of peace since the war with Aran is effectively over, because they're now off in the Far East somewhere where we can ignore them. So let's keep building our empire up and get ready for the inevitable Sassanid betrayal. There are two realms, those within the celestial sphere, and those visible by their heavenly light beyond. So began the new scripture of the universal Roman pantheon. It was a text that sought to consolidate the thousands of Roman pagan sects into a single body of traditions, mandated by the central religious authorities stationed in the empire's great temple precincts. It sought to focus the empire's efforts on gaining the favour of the major gods, tolerating the existence of traditional local gods that reigned in the provinces, but only as the servants of the true rulers of reality. The simple act of moving from oral tradition to written scripture made the unity of the Roman pagan sects increase dramatically. These standard points of reference allowed the shepherds in the Caledonian hills to know that they were honouring the gods in just the same fashion as the resplendent priestly caste of Alexandria. It provided a clear answer to the undercurrent of Christian support. No longer were they the more organised or more consistent faith. It became easier and easier to argue that the Roman beliefs were simply known to be true, and that these foreign texts, as revelationary as they may sound, were fantasy at best and sedition at worst. It also brought about a solution to the lack of state officials in many parts of the empire. It was not only the consulships that went unfilled, but hundreds of lower positions over which no agreement on an appointment could be made. Increasingly, the people were looking to their priests for answers, and with their role as an arm of the empire being strengthened, so was their claim to be the de facto authority over their areas of influence. And the state did not stop them, for it was a cheap and rapid way to restabilize the provinces after decades of constant upheaval and change. The melting pot of the empire began to cool and take shape, but further hammer blows would be made in an attempt to shatter the borders of this new world-spanning vessel before it set in for good. There was still some work yet to do, but we had made some good progress by the time the Sassanids came back to declare war on us. I'm not sure, but I think it might have been exactly 10 turns, so they just waited for the truce to end. I think it's a 10-turn truce, and then came straight back into the war with us. And now we can call all of our allies in. All of them joined but one, so that's unfortunate. And I think most of the guys who joined were probably already at war with the Sassanids, so I don't think this is a particular display of loyalty, but who knows. And of course, all of their puppet states will be forced to join them, so we're back at war with every other faction to our east, in effect. Now, the first move they make is to send 2 fleets up the Nile, a very suspicious move. They could land those fleets and do some good damage. They've also got forces coming to Nova Trajana Bostra. They're going to trap Paulus inside with a siege and 3 stacks to make sure he can't break out, although the way they've positioned those stacks is going to shoot themselves in the foot in a second. Also piling into this war was Axum. They're attacking Nabatea, and as we saw in that little montage, I actually made Nabatea my puppet state somehow. They just wanted to be a puppet state. But now we're just going to throw them away immediately. We're going to let Lower Egypt sort out its own problems. We don't want to get involved in that war. We've suddenly got a lot of stuff to do, of course. The war in Africa, by the way, is just continuing on. I expected the Western Roman Empire to conquer everything there. They seem to have an advantage, but they just can't actually get all of their stacks together to make an attack. So it's just 2 AIs flailing against each other, and it's stable for the most part. And as we can see, the Lackmates have come in to attack us in one of our settlements that I didn't manage to convert over to be Roman style. That means we don't really have a garrison, so I'll just let them win that battle. Fortunately, they decided not to take it, they just sacked it, which, as I've mentioned before, is in effect like doing nothing, so that's all well and good. So now to this siege. We've got these 3 armies surrounding the city, but the city is so large that the armies to the south of the city aren't actually in reinforcement range of the army to the north, and that's going to be very helpful for us. We can bring in Eutropius the Younger to come and attack the army that's actually doing the siege. Paulus will then technically reinforce, so they just run away and the siege is immediately broken. Although we can't really make any other moves because that army retreated around to be in reinforcement range of the other 2. So now it's a 2 versus 3. Possible to win, but there's no point doing a fight here. We might as well wait until they're standing further apart from each other and try and get something a little bit more favourable to happen. So I just left that for now. Now, with regards to those guys sailing up the Nile, I happen to have our only big fleet sitting in the docks at Alexandria. They were just dealing with public order, although that's not such a problem anymore thanks to all the reforms we've been doing. So obviously we can just come in and attack these transport ships. We get a giant advantage on the balance bar, just what I had hoped for. I thought for a second it might count as an even battle because the enemy have a lot of troops in these transports, but it's being kind to me and giving me that naval advantage. It wasn't the best order result. You can see tons of our crews went down into the red, so clearly we were boarding the enemy, even though I picked the protective stance to try and focus on the fact we had all these catapult ships. But I guess that's not quite how it works. But anyway, we can move on now and actually go for the second army. The only concern is that there are more forces out at sea which could come and try to take Alexandria, but I assessed it as being impossible because there aren't many landing points on a walled city on the interior, so once you have a few units in the garrison, it's pretty easy to hold any potential attacks. So with that in mind, we'll just continue sailing down the Nile. The enemy keep retreating, but we do have the movement to carry on and attack them once again. And surprisingly, this balance bar is actually more in our favour than the last one. I thought maybe we'd have to fight this one. But no, we just take them down. The enemy didn't take all that much damage in the fight, but because they've already retreated, they get deleted by the rules of the game. So we have defeated all of them, and that's that. 2 Sassanid armies cut down very easily. A very good start to this war. Now I've got this spy hanging around in the Sassanid core territories. This is where I want to conquer up to basically the front line, the Mesopotamian Valley. We'll try and get that territory, and we can start right now. This isn't actually part of that province, but it's on the same river, so it's a start. We can come in with 2 armies. We've got Anicius and Verus standing by to make attacks. The only risk is that by going in a southerly attack direction, these guys to the east and northeast could come in and start attacking us. We are going to have this problem throughout the war. We just don't have that many armies in comparison to our enemies, mainly because the enemies are so many different factions and they all separately get upkeep cheats. So they all get free armies, or a couple of free armies each, and that means overall you're going to be outnumbered. But For now, we're going to have an easy time. We just auto-resolve this garrison and take almost no losses whatsoever, taking out a full stack. Very nice. We'll move in, and that actually completes another province for us. So we want to move south from here if we can, but the Sassanids do have tons of armies down there. We'll see what we can do, and in the meantime, we'll start preparing this province for potential counterattacks. Now, while I was looking around, I noticed something strange and something very good. Basically, throughout this whole campaign, I've technically been in civil war, and that gave me -3 public order and -3 loyalty to all characters for the whole thing. And I thought it was because the Western Roman Empire counted as being in civil war with me, but apparently not. What I think was actually the case was, you might have seen there have been these 1 or 2 unit stacks walking around the maps, the Celtic separatists. They just weren't doing anything. They never recruited troops. They never attacked anything, they never raided anything, so I was just ignoring them, and they mostly just sat in boats in the middle of the Mediterranean doing nothing. Someone killed them, and that ended our civil war of 50 years that I didn't even know was happening. So that's caused a public order boost all over the place, and all of our officers are now becoming more loyal. They're less tempted to go out and join those separatists out at sea. And some more good news is that we can now research hereditary monarchy. So we are going to turn ourselves into a kingdom, or an empire with an emperor, I guess, more realistically. But this is a very nice tech. It gives you tons of advantages. So once we have that, our empire is going to be completely stable, I think. You... Anicius? Close, but sorry. Eutropius. But you look the spitting image of him. Funny that, isn't it? Don't look into it too much. Here, have a commemorative coin. That's both my face and his on it. Take your pick, I suppose. That's rather bold. I know. It's my dad's way of getting me famous without fighting. He's very worried after what happened. So he's keeping me off the front line until things die down a little. But this is the front line. Yes, I suppose it is. Funny that, isn't it? One problem I managed to avoid in the previous Sassanid war somehow was big agent spam. There was a little bit of it, but it was never getting to this level. You fight so many factions at once, and because the agent cap is per faction, when you fight the Eastern Empires, you'll be outnumbered in terms of agents, and they've got loads of them all over the place that will just come and keep doing things like this to you, which, while it doesn't really do anything, they're just lowering public order or something. It makes the end turn sequences extremely long because there are so many factions doing this against you. I'm a nice guy, so I'm going to be cutting that out, but there was just a clip so you can share my pain for a little bit. Anyway, moving on, the Lakhmids come at us once again at Alia, and they have an even easier time than they did last time because our garrison hasn't respawned, so we'll let them attack it again. But they are generously going to sack it one more time, and that's probably going to profit them nothing because they literally just sacked it. But they also have another move they want to make. They're coming up to attack Eutropius, and I thought this might be a viable battle. They're reinforcing, or being reinforced by a Sassanid stack standing next to them. But I ended up retreating from this, especially after I saw this terrible terrain. We'd be at the bottom of a hill, because there's still an opportunity to get a better fight. If we go around to the south side of the town, we can attack the force that's now besieging Nova Trajana Bostra and get Paulus to come out and take part in these fights, and that'll make life much easier. So that's the plan. Now I also noticed that to our east, the combined forces of Aran and Aria are slowly pushing up to our border. All of those allied states we created didn't last as long as I would have hoped, so now we're under threat. They can attack where Costa is currently standing with a very inferior army, and they can even go back north to attack their favourite target of Trapezoros, and we can't really defend both right now, so this is a bit of a conundrum. What I ended up doing was starting a new army at Trapezoros. We're going to have a number of inferior quality armies that just somehow hold this part of the battle line, because we don't have enough proper armies to defend our entire frontier, the classic problem for the Roman Empire, so we'll just have to see what we can do. Meanwhile, our main armies will need to continue the offensive to try and deliver some killing blows against the Sassanids, and I notice I'm actually in movement range of the Sassanid capital right now, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity. Both armies can reach, but the question is what's there. On my previous spy passes, of the Sassanid capital Ctesiphon, there have been many armies just standing next to it. This time though, life looked a lot easier. Nothing inside and a few troops outside. I moved on and saw some Sassanids to the south, so they're going off somewhere by the looks of things. This seems like a pretty good opportunity. They're going to have the usual full stack garrison inside, but lots of it is just trash spears, so that's okay. Now Odysseus couldn't reach that army outside, but he could reach the city, and that's going to pretty much define how we can do this. I was thinking initially we could try a siege draw out by attacking that smaller army to get the garrison outside, but we actually have enough stuff, we don't really need to do such trickery. We can just try an easier trick, and that is first besieging the city, and then we can bring Varus down with the other army to attack the group outside. This, under different circumstances, allows you to kill the guys outside, but here, because that army is so small, it will just leave this fight, which is to be expected. Unfortunately, it actually left in such a way that it's still standing next to the city, so this didn't achieve the goal to this trick, which is getting the enemy out of reinforcement range. But that doesn't really matter, because there was barely any of them. So when we come to look at this battle, it's super easy. We're really just fighting all those trash spears and pike and band, and we've got 2 armies of heavy troops to do it with. So that's not a problem. We're going to bust in. We have tons of onagers as well, which I presume makes attacking walled cities easier in the auto-resolve. Really not taking that many losses. We destroy everything on the enemy side, and we're going to occupy this place. This is going to be a very big moral victory for the Empire. We have taken the capital city of our main rival, and one of the great cities of the ancient world. We probably control all the great cities at this point, I'm not quite sure. It's going to be hard to defend, it's probably going to rebel, and we're going to need to put a lot of money into it to make it more Roman than it is, to make it easier to defend. But it's all going to be worth it, because if we can hold this position for a while, we will have humiliated the Sassanids. And they're actually getting low on provinces. They still have all their puppet states, but there's only about 2 or 3 actual Sassanid territories left at this point. Now back over to Eutropius, I'm going to try and arrange that fight I discussed, where we come over to attack the force that's besieging Paulus. So when he comes out, we'll reinforce, and we get this battle not too bad. It's 2 armies and a bit against 2 from the Sassanids, so better than the 2 against 3 odds we were facing before. Balance bars in our favour, but we'll need to do this one ourselves. This needs to be done quite carefully, and the main concern for this battle is going to be all the reinforcement directions. You can tell from where the armies are standing, this is going to be a mess in terms of where the troops actually end up and where they clash. We'll see what we can do in the next episode. Dissent against the Empire was dropping rapidly in the face of growing popular support. The Empire had ended the strife born with the fall of the previous Roman administration. With a population depleted and demoralized by wars and raids, the notion that these new overlords could enforce peace was more appealing than any political argument against them. Brigands were almost eliminated as a threat to the roads and seas, and the prophets for the Empire raised more and more banners for the Eastern wars. And those wars were themselves the source of a string of strategic and propaganda victories. Each win brought new waves of praise to Septimus Gerges, himself creeping closer and closer to Rome and closer to a throne. That is it for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks again to the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making this happen. We'll see Eutropius try to rescue Paulus there, Septimus try to rescue Eutropius, and the Empire try to stop the oncoming creep of Eastern armies in the next episode of Fields of Mars.